why don't you start us off?
Well, I believe that it's me, not Karen. So I'm Eletrice Harris, and I am the SoCal-NOMA Vice President of our SoCal-NOMA chapter. So I want to thank the USC NOMAS chapter for the invitation and the other student groups. Thank you so much. I have been practicing architecture for almost 20 years. From Chicago, I moved here some time ago and have been living and practicing in Los Angeles area ever since. So today, I'm going to talk to you about my work and the work that we do at NOMA to bring equity to the profession. So in preparing for this panel, I had to re-examine my own idea of what equity is, not only to the profession, but in general. So what I found out about myself is that I was interchanging equity and equality. And when we think of equality, it's framed by the idea of sameness and having sameness be the end goal. And equity is defined as a state in which all people, regardless of their social, economic, racial, or ethnic grouping, have a fair and just access to the resources and opportunities necessary to thrive. So I myself was, interchanging those two things. And tonight, we obviously want to talk about equity in architecture and not equality, right? Even though we want everything in life to be equal, it's probably not a realistic goal. So, but equality is. And so in architecture practice and the allied professions that we deal with, equity in architecture or the lack thereof, I feel like it can be linked to the tendency of all of us to group together with people who look like us or have sounds. It's just easier to do that. But is it practical if we really and truly want a just and equal society and profession? So in order to have justice and equity in the built environment, architects and architecture needs to have more diverse representation that reflects the rapidly changing demographics of the people we serve and design for. The other issue about equity in architecture that is the public does not fully understand the value that we as architects bring to the table in terms of the social impact of design and what it can have to inform equitable and just and sustainable public and private spaces. So our human tendency to group together spills over into our design practices. And we believe that groups we design for want and desire the same things we want. We think that the buildings and communities that we're designing for them would be something that we would like, when in fact it's not. They have their own ideas of what their community would look like and how it would be, and they are clear about what it should be. And so we need to engage the community in an equitable process and bringing them to the table and seeing where they are and what their culture is about, and then enfolding that into our designs. And that would help in making our profession more equitable. The truth is, when it comes to quality of our work as architects, greater diversity of people, greater diversity of ideas will lead to more creative and better results of our designs and the communities and the people that we design for. So we have to make room for this diversity. And we have to give equal opportunity for people to be heard, especially people of color. And it requires us to promote and move toward the empowerment of these diverse and underrepresented groups. Hold on. Okay. sorry. So we're doubling down our efforts to empower the next generation of architects. And we at the National Organization of Minority Architects and the Southern California chapter in particular, empower through our mission and our programming. And so our mission is to champion diversity within the design profession by promoting excellence, community engagement, and professional development. And so next slide. Our programming is folded into our national initiative project pipeline. And we do this by engaging youth in a community project. Next slide. So we have in our project pipeline initiative, I'm not sure who's doing the slides.
Sorry, I'm doing the slides. There's just a bad delay on my end.
Okay.
Are you able to see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Programming objectives is community engagement, and we do this on several different levels because the community is who we design for, the community is who we want to bring into our design process, and the community is ultimately our clients, and they're at all different levels. Next slide. So we in the Southern California chapter and all chapters across the nation, we do this at 4 different levels. The first level we feel like that's going to help in bringing equity into architecture is through our summer camps. We introduce youth to architecture at an early enough age so they might be able to choose this profession as a career path. And so for the last 11 years, we have been having our summer camp. And then we introduce high school students who are already interested in architecture and engage them in understanding design and community engagement. We then move to our college level engagement is as much like the NOMAS chapter at USC. We engage college students who are already in architecture programs, and we promote and mentor and support them on their journey forward. And our last leg on our pipeline programming is young professionals. These are young people who have graduated architecture school and are now interns in the profession. And we mentor and help them along their architecture journey into licensure. Next slide. And so we have been doing the summer camp for 11 years. We have 8 NOMAS chapters across the Southern California area that we service and support. And we have over 100 young professionals moving through the licensure process that we are supporting. And that's what we do here at SoCal NOMA. And we believe that equity in architecture is achieved when success, safety, and health of people are not predetermined. When everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, or otherwise, has the freedom, agency, and platform to share and amplify their stories, cultures, and experiences, and have access to our great profession. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Now we have Vienna Gonzalez.
Hi everyone, my name is Vienna Gonzalez. I was born and raised in Southeast Los Angeles. You'll see a picture of me on the right. That's when the 105 freeway first opened. My father, being in construction, took me to the opening of the freeway and we got to walk on it. I have a Master's of Science in Civil Engineering, and I am the former ASCE Vice President at CSUF, and I'm currently a project engineer at PCL Construction. Next slide. My current projects include a project called Destination Crenshaw and the LAUSD LaSalle Park Elementary School seismic retrofit. At the LAUSD project, we are currently getting ready, and we are planning on installing an elevator as well as beefing up some existing footings. Destination Crenshaw, we are also preparing for that. It's a little bit further behind, but this will be a project that is right now 1.3 miles long, that is going to be built to celebrate Black culture in South LA. Past projects include our own office build out, UCLA Anderson School of Management addition. I've worked at LAX, LA Federal Courthouse, and the I-405 Sepulveda Pass expansion. Next slide. Outside of work, this was a fun question. I just included some random pictures. For volunteering, I've been doing ACE Mentor, which is a program that's you meet bi-weekly. I don't know if any of you guys know about it, but it's really fun, and you go to high schools and you mentor and you work on a project throughout the year with various high school students. I happen to mentor at Bell High School. I also have participated in DIY Girls, and I've joined Eletrice for the past 2 summers with SoCal NOMA. And at SoCal NOMA, we did Destination Crenshaw, and it's bare bones right now. So hopefully another summer or maybe 2, we can bring the students on by to see more production and more the project actually coming together. In my free time, so I've developed some like Rona crafts. I don't know if anybody else has developed them, but I did buy a hunk of wood and I made it into that desk on the bottom picture. And that's my new workstation. It's actually, I was inspired by the PCL office. I missed my old office desk, so I made my own at home. I also, outside of coronavirus, like to travel, and I miss it dearly. I like spending a lot of time with my family as well as my friends. You can see an old college picture on the top. Those are all my friends who are currently in the industry, and I miss them so much. And then my family's on the bottom. See those guys every day. And I think that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So next, I think we have Karen.
Yep. Hi. Let's see. Great. My name is Karen Braitmayer. I'm an architect and accessibility consultant with Studio Pacifica. And I'm here today to tell you that you have the power to be both a good designer and a design activist. And I'm going to introduce you to a few ways that we try to make that happen. Next slide, please. One important thing to remember about accessibility is that it's not just for people who use wheelchairs. It's for parents who push strollers, people who are slow walkers, people in the blindness community or who are low vision, people who are deaf or hard of hearing. At its best, accessibility is a multi-sensory experience. Here at the understory and open to the public information center at the Amazon Spheres, we have the opportunity to work on. The design invites all people to enjoy the experience in multiple ways. We are passionate about design for all disabilities. Next slide, please. So here I am on the newly accessible top observation deck at Seattle's Space Needle. This is a renovation project our firm was lucky enough to work on with Olson Kundig. And if you have any doubt that beautiful accessibility doesn't translate to personal joy, I hope my expression shows it all. We are passionate about welcoming community spaces, as this next example will demonstrate. Next slide, please. So this is the Deep Dive Bar in Seattle. You know, when people go out to have fun, they just want to sit with their friends, right? But even when designers follow the accessibility rules and regulations, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a truly inclusive solution. For example, the regulations tell us that when you have a bar, you need to have a portion of that bar that has a 32-inch high counter that supports customers who use wheelchairs. Well, then that means that some of your friends are sitting up high and you're sitting down low. That's not sitting eye to eye, right? So in this space, when we looked at it, we realized that there were multiple floor heights, and we were able to use that. So I don't know if you can see, but there's a step between the major portion of the bar area and a higher portion on the left. That means that somebody sitting on the left-hand section might be sitting at chair height or in their wheelchair, and they would end up being at eye level with the folks at the rest of the bar. To us, that's a win-win situation. And that brings us to our next passion. Next slide, please. Spread the love and the architecture profession's definition of diversity. We have been talking about design and how architects can creatively address diverse needs. A great example of which is this apartment mailroom in Brooklyn. But there's another point of diversity that I'd like to address. When it comes to diversity, people with disabilities are practically invisible in architecture and related professions. I firmly believe that if our profession is committed to reaching the next level of design excellence, we need to change that. So how would we do that? Well, here's some ideas. Architecture schools must make a dedicated effort to increase diversity by reaching out to and welcoming students with disabilities. Architecture firms must be encouraged to increase diverse perspectives by hiring and supporting the careers of architects with disabilities. And the AIA, an organization that's representing its members, needs to make a significant commitment to changing this lack of representation through education and outreach. Consider offering scholarships to students with disabilities. And I'm going to ask you to remember these thoughts and think about what you can do to support this critical diversity goal. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. That was great. So next we have Eric.
Good evening. My name is Eric McAnally. I am a USC alumni, specifically from the Price School of Public Policy, Urban Planning, and Urban Design. Next slide, please. In my past experiences and how it kind of relates to equity in architecture, I here have some examples. I've worked for Studio 111, an architectural design firm, and helping them and assisting them in their equity scorecard. And so what this means is I help them create and implement their internal equity checklist for plans and projects that's past, present, and future. And the checklist is essentially not meant to be judgment or have judgment on the architects or the principals of the projects, but it's more so ways used to identify ways in which the firm can apply equity to their work through an actual process. Along with this equity scorecard, I've worked with the Southern California Association of Governments, that's SCAG, on their Go Human projects with Studio 111. And through that process, we essentially did a lot of community outreach and campaigning to reduce traffic collisions and encourage people to walk and bike through our urban design interventions that we did. I also worked for the City of Los Angeles' Urban Design Studio. And through that process, I also assisted in creating the citywide urban design guidelines and policy to maintain neighborhood form and character, while also promoting quality design and creative solutions with people, climate, and the surrounding community context in mind. Along with that, I assisted with internal coordination, which is basically working with other public agencies, developers, and council members on understanding how public infrastructure projects and major development projects can be at their best. I've also worked with the Urban Land Institute, specifically on their Building Healthy Places initiative. And I had worked on a project with ULI for the city of Bell. essentially to improve the health of people in their community through their health-related land use policies, and focusing on the LA River entrances as a beautification project. Next slide, please. On top of that, I've worked with Council District 8 in Marquise Harris Dawson's office. Vienna could speak to this. I've worked in the process of community outreach regarding Destination Crenshaw and other public infrastructural projects. And kind of voluntarily, I also work in my neighborhood, that's Westlake South. If you don't know Westlake, that is also related to MacArthur Park. I'm on the neighborhood council there. I am the treasurer. I am on the planning and land use committee, and I am on the public outreach committee to basically empower our community members through the projects that come through our neighborhood, as well as empower them and bringing them voices, uplifting their voice to ensure that whatever comes through, we're able to make sure the best outcomes come through our way. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Looks like it's my time.
Yes.
Sorry, Katie. Hi, I'm Maroukian. I'm the co-chair of the Women in Architecture Committee of the AIA Los Angeles, and also the senior project manager for HMC Architects here in Los Angeles. Next. So I wanted to show you a little bit more personal stuff. This is me. Back then in Uruguay. I was born and raised in Uruguay from Armenian heritage. So I grew up in the Armenian community, and this is when I was a scout. And as you can see, I was super cute. But besides that, the idea was that this is an image that for me is when architecture started. So when I started thinking, I never thought that I was going to be an architect. That was not one of the things, like some people are born and raised, born thinking that they will be that. I was not that person. But when I started searching in my background, when was my first experience? And it was around this time when I started designing wood construction for my camps, when we would go for 2 weeks and camp outside the city. And of course, I was competing with the boys, trying to have the best construction and best competition. And the other thing that I realized back this time, that it also, this was the beginning of the Scouts grew me as a leader also. I didn't see myself as a leader, and these type of activities and community involvement showed me that I had some of those qualities. Next. So this was back in architectural school. So I studied in Uruguay, and over there the architectural career was 8 years. It included architecture and urban planning. So it was a long period of time, but also it was a time in which I had to constantly prove myself. And I had to show that I was serious about the business that I wanted to do. And in different ways, I constantly get challenged by professors saying that, what are you doing here? Why don't you go to the kitchen? And like, haha, funny jokes like that. And it was the kind of stuff that, I will smile, and then I will present my project, and then, I will get my A's and all that. But that was like the joke every semester when I had to start school. And at the same time, Uruguay back then, they were not, we have public education, which means that there's a lot of professionals, more than the country can afford. So it's a lot of unemployment for professionals. And what that meant is like very few professors were hiring. And some of them will say, I will never hire a woman. It's only the guys who are allowed, women are just for coffee and haha, jokes like that. So after that, next, one day I was told that one of the guys from our class decided to start his office. So after working for so long in retail and pharmacies and different jobs that I had while I was studying architecture, I talked with a few friends. I started to start my own firm, which was called Cuatro Líneas. It was 4 of us. And we decided to start our own business, woman-owned business, and each of us had a role. And this little renovation that unfortunately I don't have that many pictures of it, but this was our first job. And we did the renovation of a 1930s house, and we transformed it into a spa. And we did the graphic design. So And also this was one of the Zen spaces for bath with roses and so forth. But this was our first project. And I was very proud that from nothing, we were starting our own firm. What happened after that next is that I ended up moving to the US. So I had to actually leave my new started business, and I started working here for engineers. I worked for Bureau Happel and other firms, and eventually I worked for Gensler, and I started doing great projects. And some of the things that I enjoy doing a lot were stadiums. And these are some projects that actually became very important for me. The 8484 wheelchair was the first project that I did as a mother of two. So I was leading that project with my newly born baby. And it was challenging, but it was also the timing where I started proving that one of the things that for me was very important to show to the rest of the generations to come, and for the professionals that overall, that we can have this profession and being mothers and have successful marriages, and this was the beginning of that experience for me. So that's why 8484 wheelchair was very important. And First Energy Stadium too, because it was the first renovation that I was actually leading. 8484 wheelchair was pretty much me, but the next one was with a team of 5, and it was a young team. So it was challenging to be mentoring the team and keep the ball rolling. But in regards of equity, what I enjoy a lot on stadiums is that it's the type of projects in where you feel that we're all equal. It doesn't matter how we look. Like in a stadium project, we're all cheering for our team, and that's what it makes it an awesome type of projects to work for. Next. So after that, on my career, I got the pleasure to work on competitions for the Barcelona Stadium. And if you guys know anything about Uruguay, we're big soccer fans. So, and Suarez in that time was one of the best players of the team. So I was able to go and watch a soccer game over there, which was amazing for me. I yelled Suarez goals and all that stuff while I was there. But it was the challenge of doing a competition with an architect on the other side of the ocean. And again, proving that above all, I was able to lead that team. And the reason why I keep saying this is because it was a time where it was very difficult for me to get into the leadership role. And there were several challenges that, we don't have enough time for it, but basically it became a proud and joy for me to be able to be leading teams. And the Inspire Korea, it was a team of 30 people. So it was, again, something that we were able to do, but like different anecdotes in where, after these projects, I was getting more and more promotions, and then it's when you start receiving some retaliation from other people because of that. So next. And after those big projects, I decided that I wanted to focus more on education. So I had the chance to do a little bit of experience, and because I was like, okay, I did the biggest stadiums and the biggest projects that I could imagine. I have done some theme parks and so forth, but I thought it was time to, my connection with architecture was more if I could do projects that I could relate or give something back. And my feeling was that if I was working on education, I was giving something more important than commercial buildings to society. So these are some of the last projects that I was able to work for after now when I joined HMC. And these are teams that now my relationship is different. Now as a senior architect is a different environment to work for, but it's also satisfactory. So the next one. And what gives me more joy above the projects that I have done is my involvement with the Women in Architecture Committee. So I was honored to be asked to be one of the chairs last year. And the work that we do in this committee with as you can see in this picture, it's a lot of different type of us represented there, and it's just very rewarding to be able to organize the events and to be able to bring people from all kind of races and ethnicities to the table. And the type of work that we do, as some of you, I believe, have participated, is we do events every month that are for networking and for mentorship. And our biggest one is Powerful, which we do every end of September or October, depends on the year. And that's a full day event. And a few weeks back, we were able to do our Powerful event despite COVID and all. And we were able to do it online with Zoom. And it was gratifying to have 460 people on that conversation. And for the first time, we have an LGBTQ panel to start talking about what that means in architecture. So at the end of the day, what I see my career and how I see the value of my career is not on the stadiums or on the schools that I have done, but it's more on what I can leave as in part of the community work that I do to help elevate others and to help others to have a better experience of what I had at school or at work, and to empower everyone to be their better selves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. That was amazing introductions by all. And yeah, I think we're all feeling very empowered. So thank you, Marinée, for leaving us on that note. So now I think we can turn to our Q&A portion of the event. So the questions that we have moderated have come from the Eventbrite link that was sent out. And we received some amazing questions from all of you. So we're gonna ask the panel some of them, but if you guys think of any other questions that you would like to ask during this time, you can feel free to drop them in our chat, and we'll be moderating that as well. So I guess just to kick things off, Marinée, you spoke really well about this, but we would like to know how your experiences have been defined by your identities.
You know, I was thinking about that question, and when the risk of being politically incorrect, I will say that maybe because of my heritage, I don't take BS. You know, it's like I was raised by very empowered women and very empowered communities. So I don't have that chip of saying sorry all the time, or of letting people believe that because I'm a woman and a foreigner and I have an accent, I'm not capable of doing X, Y, or Z. The opposite is true. Like, I always bring into the table that I am capable. I'm more capable. Like, I have even said that, imagine if I'm in the position that I am with this accent and this face, it's because I must be pretty good at what I do, right? So otherwise you will not see me here. But I will, you know, like, I let people talk and I let people share their mind, but then at the same time, with respect and kindness, I let them know that I'm very capable of what I'm gonna do, and then I show. You have to walk the walk. So I show them what I can do, and I let my work to talk by itself.
Eletrice, would you like to speak to this one? We're just gonna have everyone answer this one because I think it's a really good one.
Okay, so my identity is I'm an African-American woman in architecture. And I personally have not experienced blatant racism or anything like that, where my identity was either, you know, in question, or because I was a woman or African-American. But I have been in the room where I've been a witness to it for other people, as if I was not in the room, which was a crazy situation. And so I've seen it, and as you move up in the up the ladder of architecture and you go into management, you are privy to a lot of conversations about other people and where they are and their work ethic and things like that. So in those situations, in a higher management position, I was privy to some really you know, heavy biases against people that had nothing to do with actually their work. And And it was clear that, there was some, systemic racism and injustice going on in the minds of people. And so my identity has not been an issue, but watching the issues of identity of other people has been a problem. And I don't know if this was going on in another room about me, but I, didn't feel it or experience it. I agree with that, coming from a strong background and culture, that I just would not even see it or allow it to happen in my presence. So, yeah.
That's great. Vienna, would you like to speak about that?
So for me, I think when I first started working, there was a lot that I didn't know. And a lot of times, or oftentimes, I would find myself like being in a room where there's a problem and I couldn't say anything because like I didn't know how to resolve an issue, say on a job site. And I've learned that, and sometimes I would just feel like I was ignored and I didn't like that feeling. So I quickly learned that the more I know and the more I put my head down and work my butt off, the more of a resource I become on a job site. And it doesn't matter that, and when I do provide that information, it's like a game for me. Like, you're lost, let me give you the answer. And the more that I can do that, man or woman, it doesn't matter. As long as I'm giving them the right answer, you just kind of, you collect, like, if to compare it to Mario Kart, you collect a gold star, or you collect a gold star, and you continue collecting those and they build up and you're just like, oh, I do know this. And sometimes I do have to go back to my specs because they're long and complicated sometimes. And I just have to check myself. But I think once you become that resource in that moment where there's like a click, it really doesn't matter that I'm from like South LA or East LA and then I'm a Latina, and it doesn't, you're a resource now, you're valuable, you're an asset to the team, and now it's time to work and get to it. You know what I mean?
That's awesome. Eric, would you like to go next?
Sure. And I would just like to echo exactly what everybody's been saying. And to add that, coming from, I'm Black and white, and I was raised by a single mother, African-American. I have triplet sisters and I was the oldest. So there's a lot that's riding on some of us, and, kind of supporting our families and, having it all on our backs. And on top of that, you are the minority in certain workplaces and spaces. And sometimes that means that you feel, whether you're doing that to yourself or in actuality, that you're skating on thin ice. So you kind of have to be the representative or a perfect example of what your roles and responsibilities are. I think that's a big challenge that's that my identity has influenced with my experiences in the field. On top of that, I'm on the beginning half of my career, and I can say that even though I've been in a lot of different organizations this early on, I've been able to kind of recognize and identify that my identity may also limit me in my scope of work sometimes, or just it allows certain groups to just check off their diversity box. And so I think it's important for people to realize that no matter who we are, where we come from, or what we are capable of, is that, we're people, and that we're multifaceted individuals with many different curiosities and many interests that can really add value if given the opportunity to.
That's an amazingly motivating statement. Karen, let's take us home on this one.
Oh, I'm not sure I can top what Eric just said. I have to admit that as a wheelchair user, I probably did not see myself as a diverse person when I started in architecture. I think I really kind of came to understand my disability as something that I would be proud of, really, when I was in my mid to late 20s. And by that time I was like working and I think I'm just super stubborn. So when people say things like, oh, I don't know if you can be an architect, I'd be like, well, right there, that means I am going to be an architect the minute you tell me you're not sure I can do it. So I think I kind of came around circle to understand that that I have a worldview that is slightly different than other people. You know, I can walk right by a set of stairs looking for the elevator and be like, oh, are there stairs there? So, you know, just being a chair user makes you have a different perspective. But I don't know that I've really acknowledged any particular limitation due to that.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. It was great hearing about your intersectional identities and how those have played into, you know, you as an architect or planner or within the field. So our next question is about equity. Oh, I don't know the title of this panel. So how do we prioritize equitable design, equitable planning? So like, how do we combat forces of gentrification, cultural erasure, lack of accessibility? It's a pretty big question, but yeah, how do we design equitably?
So I could start if you're good with that. All right. This is Karen speaking, and I think it's very, very important for architects to understand the power that they have. As I said earlier, you have the power to include and you have the power to exclude. And it's very, very important that we understand how subtly the spaces that we create can speak to people, whether it's physically including people or making people feel just generally welcome in their community. And I can't remember exactly who brought it up before, but it's very important that we listen to the community that is going to be using this building or the space that you're creating, and reflect their needs, not our needs, but their needs.
I'd like to continue that with what Karen was saying. Is in my opinion, that I can speak to is community engagement, design charrettes, and policy. And with what Karen was saying, that's the community engagement piece, and it's what I like to call as being a good neighbor, and that's involving community members to the table from beginning to the end of the process. It's an iterative process, and it's important to truly value their input. I think we have to reframe what it means to be an expert and appreciate these community members' wealth of knowledge, because they're the experts in the community and that you are designing in, and their experiences is enough validity for their expertise. Some examples are that you can include them in design workshops involving community surveys, walk audits, and just listening sessions, while bringing on maybe a few core members, or what we like to call champions, to be involved more intimately on the project's task force that works with other experts like yourselves or nonprofits and the developers as well. Another way to go about it with community engagement is visiting the neighborhood council, being in Los Angeles, of course, and present your projects to them and come in with the right intentions, more importantly. And it's not just trying to get a sign off for the project. Let's see. For design charrettes, for example, you're working at an architectural firm and the lead staff and the principals are presenting the schematic and conceptual design concepts to the client or the developer. Include equitable and sustainable elements within all proposal options. I think that's a way to kind of make sure you're doing your part when it comes to equitable development and equitable design. And then last but not least, to add on to that is the policy component. And that is simply the same thing, that method that you will be doing in design charrettes. It's kind of embedding those design principles within the plans, within the documents and the guidelines that go along with what you're doing when you're writing policy work. So
like, if I could add to Eric's statements, at PCL, oftentimes we'll have like a certain amount of small businesses, and there's goals for that. And we have like 40%, I think, of our subcontractors are women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses. So giving them the chance to be a part of a project only helps them grow. And even if they're a local small business, their tax dollars end up going back into the communities. And it ends up going full circle. And you end up getting all these, for minorities, you just diversify the business that you're dealing with. And for projects specifically, when you have a more diverse project and you have more people from different backgrounds and stuff, it's been proven that their projects or companies are more profitable. Their safety values go through the roof. You get more ideas because there's more innovation on the project.
Yeah, I was going to, I think you kind of mentioned that one, the diverse staff. When we're designing projects, that we need a diverse staff, because if everybody looks the same, everybody comes from the same background, as creative as we can be, we might not be able to understand what this project is about. We might not be able to fully listen to our users and fully bring our personal experience. I mean, I've been in different projects that were outside the country, and sometimes we underestimate the designers that we have that come from a different background. And it's a shame, because you will see, if you truly listen to them, they can bring so much to the conversation, so much to the design, because it comes from them as architects or junior architects, however the level they is, but also from their personal experience of living in similar communities, of experiencing it from neighbors or family members. So that personal touch is always something that is important to bring to the table. And companies, I think little by little, they are understanding that, and there is an effort to make that change. And what I wanted to say, because I think part of the question is what else can we do? And at HMC, we started on a panel we have our own committee for diversity and inclusion, and we are talking on how can we improve our diversity and inclusion? What can we do on our end? And it's a little bit of some of the panels that we're showing before, like the work we're talking about. Can we maybe start bringing interns from high school? Can we start bringing interest? Because at the end of the day, there's some communities in which architecture means a career of rich people, right? So they don't identify themselves as being an architect, or if they haven't I never had a person in my family who was an architect. Everybody was a business person, because they were all immigrants. So it's the fact of seeing someone that you can reflect yourself in and start bringing them into the reality, like you can also be part of this community. And by doing that, we are enriching of future projects as well.
I agree with everything that everybody has said, but when you want to ensure that a community, that the forces of gentrification or the culture is not erased, equitable design itself is a combatant of this, because if you're going to be equitable with the neighborhood and you're going to bring them in and find out what they want, then you would not be participating in gentrification. For example, if a developer comes into a neighborhood and they want to build housing, and no one in the current neighborhood will be able to afford the housing, then that shouldn't be even, contemplated as being built in that neighborhood. And that is exactly what is going on with a lot of the gentrification and cultural erasure in these communities. They're just, following the developer's book of how many units they can get on so much land, and they are not engaged in the community. And so we as architects are going to be equitable, you know, in our work. We have to really just not participate in that. If it's not serving the community, the existing community, what is the point? I know that gentrification is sort of needed in some communities that have become dilapidated and that are falling apart, but you still have to service the community, because where are these people going to go? Especially when it comes to housing.
Yeah, most of all, when some of the projects ended up looking like copy paste, right? Like they're like projects that they're housing projects that were designed for somewhere else in town, and then they bring in, they think that it applies everywhere else, right? And it's that spirit, like forgetting completely that each place has an identity and each community has an identity, and that's not at all reflected on the projects that get built at the end of the day, besides the pricing, like you were saying, that it might not be affordable for them. And that's something that, you know, I'm going to bring again the South American card, but like, if you guys check on, you know, La Boca in Argentina, or like projects like that they're very low income places, but they have such a strong identity that they become later touristic places. So people actually just go to see it because of the type of painting on the streets, or the type of graffitis in Brazil. Are a lot of examples like that. So I would love to see things like that here in the States, like things that really embrace that cultural difference and that community spirit, and it becomes like truly their identity, and it's reflecting from the housing to the streets to, you know, the stores that you have on the streets, and forgetting that copy pasting, right? I know it's cheaper for construction and everything, but can we, like, you know, can we really look into how can we make them feel that that's their home, that they don't need to go anywhere else, and that we will embrace it?
So looks like we're a bit short on time, but thank you so much. But if we can just get one more question in, maybe kind of the spirit of what you've just been talking about. Is there any one piece of advice that you might have for younger generations in general, or more specifically for those looking to incorporate equity in their design careers?
I'll go. Well, you're asking architects to give you one piece of advice, which is a no-no, because there's no way we can do that, but I'm going to try. To incorporate equity to design, everything that you've learned in your life so far, you must reimagine in order to promote equity. The current culture and system of design is corrupt, and it's just not a good pattern to move forward on. I know you guys are really far in your educational journey, but you're going to have to reimagine what you think about design and how you're designing it. You must create a new framework to hold the vulnerability and courage that you need to develop self-awareness, as an equity-centered designer. It's just that simple. You must notice and reflect on everything in society and reimagine it being available and accessible to everyone. Because right now, the way that they have been teaching you does not do that. There are all these hierarchies and levels of privilege that must be eradicated. You can start by reflecting on your own identity, your values, your emotions, your biases, and your assumptions. And then you can empathize with humanity, with curiosity and courage as you move forward in your design career. Build on an ongoing and transparent perspective throughout your design thinking. And this will allow you to notice and focus and reflect on the actions, emotions, and insights and of people, of humanity, of the communities for which you're going to design, and that it will have an impact on your design, and you will have a greater impact on others and their community, their culture, and their environment. So I'm asking you to take an equity pause from everything that you've learned and reimagine how it could be when everyone has access and everyone has the ability to live in this world free of discrimination and lack. That's my one piece of whole lot of advice.
Thank you so much for that. I know that's a really tough question. Sorry to ask for just the one piece, but thank you.
I'm going to go next if I can. So I actually collected, and I might put it on the chat, a few books that I read that were helpful. So I'm just gonna put it like, this is called, I don't know if the background will let me show it. Doesn't let me. So one is like, find a sponsor, not a mentor. So that's a good one. Like someone who will help you in growing and going up in your career. Another one is called The Confidence Code. I'm advertising books in here. This one is very good also because it talks about our genetics and other things, DNA and so forth. And this one I'm still reading, but it's Bring Your Whole Self to Work. That's part of what you have to be yourself. So when you're trying to be someone else, when you're trying to mimic someone else, then it's not going to work out because you're the only person who is you. And at the end of the day, the best way of moving forward is a little bit of Karen was saying. I think we all have some kind of stubbornness. I'm a big stubborn person. My mom could tell you how hard it was for her to raise me, but the stubbornness is the part that I think that it takes you, because if don't let, it's going to be a lot of difficulties, and you are at the end of the day the most valuable person and the strongest person that could make you achieve those goals. So you have to keep moving forward, keep persevering, and when you truly believe on that, you will be able to do equity project and like bring more interesting projects to the table, make your voice louder for others to hear, and hopefully I'm really, I want to say finally that I'm very excited of the involvement of all of you on this topic, because it really brings hope in what the future of architecture could be. So that's my last phrase.
Wait, if I could go next, sorry, I was on mute. But to echo what Marina was saying about the stubbornness, my mother couldn't get me dressed in the morning in normal clothes to get out the house on time to save her life when I was younger. So yeah, the stubbornness is true. But if I could give you guys any advice, I would say is to listen as much as you can, and to listen to what people like and what they value, and listen, and you'll build your network, and you'll also find your resources, and you'll also learn. You'll learn from whoever if you just sit and listen about what they have to say. That would probably be my most important advice.
I can go next. I guess a piece of advice that I would give is, especially in the educational institution, is to kind of be mindful of your habits, because those habits may carry on along in your career. So for example, it's very important to collaborate. When you're going into these design competitions, work with others that you're not used to working with, or that you're uncomfortable working with. And that goes along with talking with your peers that are unlike yourself, whether that be culturally or outside of your practice. I've done a few competitions, and I've also recognized, I've taken some classes in the landscape architectural program and the architectural department, and so forth. And it's interesting to get a different perspective and to understand what people are thinking about and what people are considering and how they operate when it comes to these projects, because it's not just an architect working on a project, or an engineer working on a project, or the developer working on a project. We're all collaborating together to create something beautiful and innovative. And so that also carries on when you're working with others alike. It's just that, yeah, some people just don't understand each other enough, and that's a serious problem. Another thing I'd like to add is when you're in the career, along in your career, even when you're doing projects now, just take a site visit to the project area to truly get a feel of the environment and, more importantly, the people that call it home.
Great, and I guess I'm going to bring up the rear here. I think there are a couple things I think are important. One is get to know people who are different from you. If you really want to understand and appreciate what the needs are of people with disabilities, get to know people with disabilities. Like, engage with the disability services community at school. There are disability studies programs. Take a class. Understand the history, what people feel is important. You understand that people with disabilities are everywhere, in every community. It doesn't matter racially, socioeconomic, there are people with disabilities. So you can meet people and get to know them and understand kind of where they're coming from. Then the other thing is use your voice. So I would hope, as so many of you are really passionate about social justice and engagement and stuff, and you're going to enter a profession that perhaps the workplaces don't have that same level of engagement. Maybe they do, but maybe not. But use your voice, ask questions, be the person that says, how can we do this? How can we do better? What can we do? Like, bring in people with lived experience to try to make that project better. And you can be the one that asks those questions and is an ally. So I really encourage you to not only learn, spend time with people personally, but also encourage your office community in the future to do that. I think, our profession is going to be better because of the concerns and interests that you all are expressing just by having this panel. That's a great sign. So I think we have a lot of positive opportunities coming our way, and I really look forward to seeing what y'all are going to do with that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the amazing presentation and responses, Eletrice, Eric, Karen, and Nate in Vienna. Thank you for coming today to share with us your perspectives on the issues of equity in architecture. They were super insightful and inspirational work that was done by you guys with community in mind. And those are all really important issues to consider in design and built environment. And I feel like a lot of people approach them with a not in my backyard kind of mentality. And hopefully the work that you guys have done and are currently working on will continue to give back to society and also to inspire future generations. Thank you everyone in the audience joining us tonight. And just a quick reminder by Eletrice, there's a lecture series for all the NOMAS chapters that's happening on Tuesday nights from now on. And actually it's happened for 2 weeks now, but there'll be more to come. Hopefully you guys can join, and it'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for having us.
Thank
Bye,
you very
guys.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Bye.
You guys are great.
Thank you.
We love it.
You.
Yes.
Awesome.
Waiting for the recording to stop.
Oh yeah, I can stop it.